Welcome to Yelling Into the Void, a podcast discussing and exploring topics in World of Warcraft. This week, we've got some new and improved hosts. We've got Keystone Legend, Scott Daly, and Keystone Legend, Tevin Crody. That's right. We finally hit 3K this season.
When you unlock the achievement, your posture improves. Did you know that? It just naturally suddenly sit up straight and have confidence for the first time in your life. It's a crazy thing. They didn't put that in the patch notes.
Get a top hat or some shit to wear the whole time too. Monocle maybe.
Yeah.
But the funny thing about this is though, Scott, you and I have talked about this a little bit and we're a little bit confused at first, but Keystone Legend is just over top 10%.
Yeah.
Barely just over top 10%, I think. Top 9 point something, which is, I think, insane. Comparatively to when we've gotten 3K or higher than 3K in the past, I feel like that is a crazy number.
Yes. It's a combination of things, right? So it's they eased up the scaling from 1 to 10, right? Instead of scaling 10% per key, it was 7% per key. So it's never been easier to get the amount of stuff timed you need timed. But I just think the tuning is better, and also we just got a whole bunch of new gear this week. It's a combination of things, but yeah, I think it's never been easier to get to that 3K point. So while I am very happy and impressed with myself for doing so, I do acknowledge that it's not too hard actually.
Well, we have been turbo boosting here for about a week now. So I don't know how you're feeling about this, but I don't think my opinions of this have really changed all that much.
Yeah. I do want to offer a comparison point as we talk about this, though, because I just pulled up the cutoffs for Dragonflight Season 3, which was the last time that you and I really pushed hard in this game. The top 10% at the end of the season in Dragonflight Season 3 was at 2788. Right now at 3K, we are the 9.5%. So the top 1% was 3287, which I think right about where we ended that season. So I think we're used to playing in the top 1% range, and it's a little weird that we're not there.
Yeah, especially after what was season 1 of this expansion and then how little we pushed in season 4.
Yeah.
It almost feels like we're having to re-progress and relearn our Mythic Plus chops a little bit.
Definitely.
It feels very weird.
Definitely. And it's really fun. The top 1% in season 1 of The War Within was 3050. And the top 1% currently in season 2, which is probably going to go up, is 3295. So we're talking about a score swing of 250 so far. And it'll go up from there.
I'm currently top 1% of Dragonfly or War Within season 1. Look at me go.
Nice.
But so again, to talk about turbo boost stuff, I think there's a few things to unpack here. One, it's nice. I mean, that's what you and I came out of last week saying, having more item levels, nice, being able to do more things and just have more stamina and have more main stat is just nice.
Yeah.
But it's still weird. The way they implemented it, in my opinion, is still weird. It's still weird. Is this happening every season? So there's still a lot of things that are up in the air about it, and I still don't know how I feel about it. So truly, I don't believe my opinion has shifted much from last week to this week.
Yeah.
After having played with it for a week.
Yeah, I mean, we had been done gearing for a while, right? So it was nice, I guess, to log into the game and be like, I've got all this gear I need to upgrade, and calculating how many crests I needed for it and how many runs I was gonna have to do, and planning my upgrade route was a thing I'm not used to doing mid-season. So hooray, we got to do that. I am still kind of torn about the idea of this being a thing that is going to happen every week, every season from now on, as a thing of how does that affect motivation to push and things like that? Because I mean, honestly, the reason, I think you and I were fully capable of getting 3K before the extra 6 item level we got this week. I just think we were capable of doing that once we got the 6 item level and got moderately competent pugs in our keys, like timing those 13s was not that difficult. But like the second they announced this was not long after I came back to the game, and I was just like, oh, I just don't see the point in like working really, really hard to push my score up right now when I know just around the corner, like I can just get my weekly 10s in, keep collecting gear, and then right around the corner is going to be this massive influx of power. I don't know what the point of pushing now is. And I think like not everyone's going to feel that way. Obviously, like some people just play this game because it's fun, which is a weird concept. But I think a big portion of if this becomes a regular thing, like we already have this thing where they usually do like a mid-season tuning pass, like in the 11 and like the dot 5 one, like there's a tuning pass there, and they also always introduce a new item at that point. Like this has been their new habit now. It was the circlet and the annulet, and now it's going to be some delve belt. Jesus Christ. They're going to make me do delves, Devin. No.
The sad thing is like that was fully on the docket to talk about this week, and there's been some other things that have happened, which we'll get to, that have kind of pushed that off.
Plus, we just don't know a lot about it right now, so it probably makes sense to save that for when we learn a little bit more about it. But so like, there's already this thing of like, why work really hard to push now if I'm going to be getting some increased power in a month or so? And now it's like, not only are we going to be getting an increased power in some random item that we're going to get mid-season, but also we're going to add 6 item levels to everyone every time. It's just like, it really kills motivation to push. And again, not for everyone, obviously. But for me, I know it would.
The other thing I think about this though is like, we were talking about this just right before we started recording. I feel like this kind of reinvigorated some people and like gave them maybe the confidence that they needed to start pushing into some of these like higher end keys.
Sure.
And I don't know if it's just like the item level or like more people are coming back to the game to get this item level, so now there's more keys. But it definitely felt like in trying to get some of these 12s and 13s timed, there were some people who were like a little bit newer to the high key scene. Like they were definitely polling a little bit slower, being a little bit more methodical, when it's like to time some of the highest keys, you kind of have to do ridiculous things to be able to actually time the dungeon. Not saying 13s are that area, but that there are definitely just little minute things that I can pick out that I feel like it just gave me an essence that there were some newer people who haven't really done high keys that were starting to come into this avenue.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely had some keys where we were just like looking at the tanks or the other DPS in our group and just being like, do you know these dungeons at all? And like let's be clear here, we're not experts of the dungeons, right? Obviously not. We're learning as much as everyone else is, but like just some people that I think like felt the pressure of, oh, this is a 13, I have to do crazy MDI shit now. And it's like, no, you don't actually though. It's like, yeah, it's a 13, but it's a 13 where we all have 6 additional item level and DPS is crazy. And if you just like pull rationally, we're probably going to time it. It's like, no, I have to do crazy pulls and then I die. And then I blame my healer. Actually, I will give it up to the tanks that overpulled and then immediately dropped. None of them sent me whispers complaining about how it was my fault that I couldn't keep them up. So I'll throw them that. But yeah, I mean, they definitely felt like, I think if you're like, there was this thing that happened very early in the week where like everyone was running 12s, right? Because no matter if you're capable of running a 12, no matter what your score is, if you're trying to get all this new gear, you're going to grind 12s because it has the most keystones you can get, or the most crests you can get per keystone. So everyone was doing 12s. And so you got it like early in the week, I think you got like a lot of very skilled players doing 12s that made 12s probably even more easier than they already are. I think the weird thing about that is like, then you have 13s and like all the good players are probably, they've done all their 12s to get all their crests. And then they're going back to their higher keys, which are usually push keys or maybe 15, 16, 17, that area. And 13 is this weird thing where it's like everyone else is just starting out. So it did feel like this interesting cutoff where the majority of people running 13s this week are people that maybe don't have a lot of that experience, and it definitely showed.
Yeah, I agree. So I guess is this a bad thing? I feel like this is
No.
probably a good thing.
It's
getting more
temporarily
people.
frustrating in like where we finally get a 13 Dark Flame. We're like, finally, we've been trying to roll this key and it's just not happening. We've done so many homework keys, just get this very easy joke key. And then we walk in, our tank just nukes the key and then alt F4s. That's frustrating. But overall, I think this is a good thing for sure.
Yeah. Well, okay. We've got to talk a little bit about like what happened over the past weekend.
Oh,
because this is one of the main things that I want to talk about today.
Is
There's a little bit of
drama?
a little bit of drama in the competitive WoW scene.
I decided to watch the MDI this weekend, and it was a mistake.
You brought all the drama onto the MDI, Scott. What have you done? So, for those who don't know, the MDI Group C went this weekend, which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that is the final group, right? Just A, B, and C?
There are, yes. I mean, they're like China does its own thing to decide. I don't understand. It's not like a cup, but they do their own thing to decide the two teams that are going to the finals. Yeah.
So groups A, B, and C have went over the past 3 weeks. C went this past weekend, which had all of the big hitters. It had Dorky's team, which was called Goated. It had Mandatory. It had Perplexed. Like all the huge heavy hitters that you normally think about outside of Wunderbar were this weekend. So Echo wasn't there, which if you don't know, Echo is now Wunderbar because now is no longer associated with Echo and all of this other
There's
garbage.
A lot of drama. We don't need to talk about that drama. We're here to talk about other drama.
So Dorky's team, anyways, was competing, and now his team had initially asked about something that they could do. We're told no. Dorky's team did it without asking, yada yada, led to all this drama. We'll talk about that more once we get to like the main segment, but just know that there was MDI drama. A team has been disqualified, a team that Scott and I would very much so be rooting for had they not been disqualified. And that's kind of what we'll leave it now until we start talking about it more.
I'm holding it. I'm holding it.
So the last thing that happened, and the last thing that we'll touch on if we have time, is a bunch of player housing stuff came out over the last week, and I think that it's worthwhile to talk about. I know that in the past we've said like excited for player housing, don't know how much we're really going to interact with it, but these reviews and interviews and kind of behind the scenes word of mouth stuff that's been popping up has really added to my ever growing excitement for this. And I really think that, again, we're back to Blizzard doing, I believe, what it does best in taking essence from something and really turning it into and creating their own thing out of it rather than just trying to carbon copy other areas. So
can you believe
really
they didn't invite us? They didn't invite us to this cool thing.
We weren't even at PAX to be invited, but they didn't invite us.
They could have flown the jet out to 2 different locations to get us. They could have, if they cared, they could have done it.
So, Scott, I know you want to talk about the MDI stuff. So I'm going to give you kind of the floor to explain exactly what happened here. I gave a brief overview, but if you want to explain exactly what happened here, and you and I have been talking back and forth about this for like, I think 2 days now. So we've got a lot of thoughts. We'll put it that way. We've got a lot of thoughts.
So the quick version of what actually happened, so we can get into our commentary on it, is the team Goated finished the day in second place, right behind Mandatory, to the point they were going to get to play on Sunday. And then it was announced that they used an illegal consumable, not approved consumable, for 3 of their Dark Flame Clef runs. So those 3 runs were tossed out, did not count, and therefore their score dropped down to the bottom, and they were essentially kicked out of the tournament. Great news for Ducks Can Fly, who had a really rough day, like failed 2 keys very late in both of them in a row, and it kind of put them behind. And then suddenly they found themselves getting to play on Sunday, which they used to the fullest of their capabilities, aka they got absolutely stomped on Sunday and didn't even complete one of the dungeons. But that's for another story. So essentially what happened is Dorky, as the tank of this team, was using a shocking disclosure potion, which is a dragonflight potion that essentially like emits damage in an aura around you. They were pre-potting at the very beginning of Dark Flame Cleft, and they were using this pot to essentially make gathering in the first pull of Dark Flame Cleft a little bit easier. There's so many mobs you have to gather there, and demon hunters and their threat is a little wonky at times, especially on the gather. So they were just using this as a pre-pot potion. It wasn't doing like a large amount of damage. It was just making that initial gather a little bit easier. However, it was a Dragonflight consumable and not a War Within consumable, and therefore, according to Blizzard, was not sanctioned as allowed. Now, a lot of people have spent a lot of time looking through the rules of the MDI to see where it specifically states that you may not use consumables from previous expansions. There's a lot of things that it talks about, like the vendors will be provided for you, and you may not wear any gear from any other source besides that is provided to you on the vendors. There's not anything about consumables specifically, and the way they got the potion was they just went to Valdrakken, and all the tournament vendors were still up there from Dragonflight, and they just bought them there. So it's this really weird thing where obviously Blizzard has come down on this and made it their ruling that's saying, no, you can't do that. But I don't think they did a very good job communicating that. And as you said, the thing that we learned just yesterday was that Wunderbar had the same idea and asked the question and said, hey, can we use a consumable from Dragonflight in order to make the gathering in this dungeon pretty easier? And Blizzard said no. And I think the reason why they had to DQ these runs is because they said no to another team, right? Like if Now's team hadn't asked and Dorky's team was the only one that did this, and that was it, then I think they probably would have been like, we're not going to let you do this anymore in the future, but we're going to let it slide now. But because they specifically told another team that they could not do this, then they put themselves in a situation where they have to act.
Right.
Unfortunately, that begs the question, why didn't you notify the other team? Like, so there's this whole system in the MDI for the teams that they have they have a Discord that they all communicate with each other, and that Blizzard communicates with them via this Discord. And when you're asking permission to do something, obviously that's private, right? Because if they say yes, you don't want to divulge to the other teams this cool new strategy you just came up with. So I understand why people ask permission to do things in Blizzard in private. I think once Blizzard says no, then it should be the standard operating procedure of the tournament that you then post a rule clarification in a common thread in Discord that says, hey, all teams, by the way, you don't even have to say which team came to you with this. You can just say, by the way, you can do this. And there have been moments where that's actually happened, right? I think that a good one in this tournament is the parasol that people are using in the Rookery in order to kind of, when you jump down the hole in Rookery, you can use the parasol to float and skip a bunch of trash mobs. Blizzard was asked about that. They said yes. They communicated to all the teams, yes, it's okay for you to do this. And they even put a parasol like on one of the vendors in Dornegal. So they like communicated very clearly, this is okay. In fact, we're going to help you get the things you need to get it. So making very clear. And here on the other side, they don't communicate that ban at all until after the end of the day. Like it would also be one thing if they did it on their first run and Blizzard had said, oh, whoa, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You have to exit the dungeon and do it again. But they waited until they did it 3 times on 3 consecutive dungeons up to a level 21 key, finished the day, and then we're like, oh, we just noticed that you did this. Like there's so many ways in which Blizzard dropped the ball on this one. Like seriously. Like, and yes, obviously I cheer for this team. I like this team. So I'm a little biased here. I want to acknowledge my bias here, but I just think this is fucking stupid. I think this is really dumb.
So I For the most part, I agree. I agree that, asking in private is fine. I agree that once they say no, that should have been communicated to everybody. The one part that I do think is a little bit weird is Blizzard has proved in the past that they will outlaw things that aren't necessarily clear. And so it has been brought to teams' attentions and made known that you should ask for anything that seems like it's a little bit off the rails.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I do think there is a little bit of onus with Goated for not asking themselves. But again, Echo Wunderbar went in Group A, I believe, like 2 weeks ago, and this still wasn't communicated by now,
Yeah.
which is like, that's insane. That was 2 weeks ago, and we haven't said anything. So yeah, I really think that this is a drop of the ball on WoW Blizzard's part for the most part.
Yeah.
I do think that in the future, teams should always ask if it isn't clear if they should be able to do something. They should always ask. If it's from an old expansion, you should ask. If it's something that feels slightly like an exploit, ask. Like, I think that it should always be brought to the tournament runner's attention, so it's never ambiguous at the end.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, there's like serious money involved in this thing, right? So they have to take it seriously. Like they have to. And I get wanting to curtail certain things, and I get the mentality that they want the players to have, which is you should ask. When in doubt, ask. And I think that's good. And I agree with you. Like, at the end of the day, Goated should have asked first, and if they had, they would have been told no, and then there wouldn't be an issue. But I don't want to let Blizzard off the hook either, because I think, yes, they fucked up in not asking, but Blizzard needs to make these rules clear and straight. And I know this is a very complex game, and we're dealing with a game mode that is not the normal game mode. Like, we're dealing with Tournament Realm. Things are weird on Tournament Realm. Things like, obviously in the MDI, skips and exploits and things that people are doing on live is not, some of them are not allowed. But I think it is very difficult. Like, I think in an ideal world, you shouldn't have to ask because the rules should be clear. Now, that's not the world we live in, right? Yes, that's why Goated should have asked, because we don't live in a world in which the rules are clear. But I think Blizzard's takeaway from this thing needs to be, we need to get this stuff straight. We need to clearly communicate and make sure every player on every team understands what is allowed, what isn't allowed, because the problem is it seems so random at times. Like, why are certain skips okay? Like the thing that people are doing in Workshop, where they're blinking through the wall and skipping that third boss and that one, I forget what the area is, but they're like blinking through this closed wall and getting to skip that whole thing. We're fine with that. That's fine. But then you do another kind of skip and it's like, no, you can't do that. Like, it just feels arbitrary and nonsensical. Like, I don't understand why they told Wunderbar no in the first place. Like, who cares? Like, it's a pre-pot that's like, it's not an exploit. It's not exploiting anything. Like, I guess they felt that because you have to take the extra step of going to Veldraken, it was unfair to other players who wouldn't have thought of using old consumables. But, like, first of all, take the fucking vendors down. Like, just oops, did you forget to do that? Did you forget? Yeah, you did. And then second of all, like, just it's so, I mean, this isn't even true on the MDI as well. This is true on live. Like, the things that you are allowed to do and the things that you are not allowed to do is so unclear at times. And that's true in every aspect of this game, that it's just like, what is legal and what is a slap on the wrist and what is a ban, especially when it comes to Mythic Plus. We talked a few months ago about how even at the end of last season, there were people doing all kinds of exploits and getting buffs and bringing things into the dungeon they weren't supposed to. And I know we heard that in China, NetEase banned a bunch of them, but I don't know I don't know. We never got to see what the action was on people in NA and EU. We never saw that. And it's like, it's you play this game and you're just like always kind of skirting up to the line of what is and isn't allowed. And the problem is the line isn't even a clear line sometimes. It's a dotted line or an invisible line. And honestly, like, I think if you ask Goated, they would say we didn't ask because there was none of us that believed this was doing anything shady. We went and bought some potions and that's all we did. And like, it's got to be so frustrating.
I need to ask you though, like, up until what, season 1 of War Within, like, it was always exploit early, exploit often was the mentality from competitive WoW, just in general. And then season 1 rolled around, there was a boatload of bans that happened right before the Race to World First, and some that impacted the Race to World First, and like people had to wait longer to do their splits and yada yada yada. And then they kind of kept that same mentality going into season 2 and the race with that. But again, like you were saying, this isn't necessarily an exploit. And back to your previous statement of keeping Blizzard on the hook here, this is honestly a second place in which Blizzard has dropped the ball, because this is just to deal with the fact that there is still bugged aggro from Demon Hunters, which you and I can talk about that in a little bit because I understand what's going on here. But yeah, this was to solve a problem that they have introduced into the game that probably shouldn't be there, that a lot of other tanks don't have to deal with. And it's just weird that this was considered illegal or against the rules or whatever you want to call it to me.
And frankly, like, okay, so you don't want a situation in which you are exploiting a game to like you're breaking the boss, right? Like, I totally understand you do not want to allow players to do a situation where like you find a way to break the boss where you like break his sequencing and the boss just stands there for the entire fight. And that's because not only is that unfair, but it's also like boring entertainment, and that's ultimately what the MDI is entertainment. But to that same point, isn't creative use of consumables cool actually and exciting? And like isn't that the type of thing you want in a situation? We were complaining about the MDI last week because we were like, the thing about it is without the affixes, the routes are pretty standard for everyone. Like the dungeons kind of go the same way, and it's like whether or not one person makes a small mistake is basically what the TGP is now. Is like, is this person gonna have? Is this team gonna have the perfect pull? And is this team gonna make one mistake and then lose 2 people, and therefore they lose? They're not able to time the key, and that's not as exciting to watch. But like the most fun thing was like when someone does a skip that no other team has ever known about, and you're like, oh fuck, that's so cool, or had some creative idea for something. Like, I will never forget one of the skips in Theater of Pain in Shadowlands season 3 or 4, where they all rolled pandas because of the take less safe fall, like less fall damage, like bounce back talent. And so they were able to jump from one of the platforms in Theater of Pain and not die. And it's like, that's like fun, creative shit that I think the game should be encouraging and the tournament should be encouraging. And the idea that like, no, you only have this set of consumables, and frankly, I don't like the War Within consumables kind of suck, don't they? Like, I felt like in Dragonflight, at least, the variety of like what you used for like your potions, because like as a healer, I use Shocking Disclosure Potion all the time because it was pretty good damage for me to do that.
Right.
And there's no like I feel like everyone uses the same pot. Like there's the throughput potion is the same for every single class. Everyone uses the same flask, more or less. I think there's like 2 options. You either use the haste flask or you use the other one that just rotates through secondaries. And I just feel like the consumables in the game are really boring. Like there's a bunch of them. There's a lot of consumables that they put in the War Within, but they're untouched. They're not used. And so the fact that in order to get creative use of consumables, they had to go back to the previous expansion says something about your design as well. Maybe you need to have better consumables here, actually. Mm-hmm. So I just like, just from a an overall level, not even like should they have asked, should not they have asked, should the rules be more clear. It's just like I just can't get over the fact that like this makes the tournament more fun and you are squashing that. And that's like philosophically in my mind a dumb decision.
Yeah, the other part of this too though, like they have proven, and you can go back and look at beta servers. Every single beta server or alpha server has locked you to an area and you have to use specific NPCs to teleport to specific places.
Yeah.
Why is the tournament realm not like that? Like if you don't want people to go back to Valdrakken and use the vendors that you haven't removed, then don't let them go to Valdrakken.
Yeah, why put a rule in your tournament that says, why put a rule in your thing that says you can't get gear from dungeons? It's like, well, just don't let them go do the dungeon.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's a lot here that I think that kind of just ruins people's feeling about the integrity that WoW has when it comes to the competitive scene.
Yeah.
Which I want to be extremely clear. When it comes to the Race to World First, none of this matters because that is not a Blizzard sanctioned event.
Right. Yep.
It matters so much for this, the TGP, and for the AWC.
Yeah.
Because those are put on by Blizzard, funded by Blizzard, promoted by Blizzard. So they have to be crystal clear when it comes to the stuff that they are doing because that is their tournament. They're running it. Nobody else is.
Yeah.
For the Race to World First, ambiguity is always going to be there because it's not sanctioned by Blizzard. They don't do anything to put on the race. They just release the raid and people put on the race by themselves.
Yeah, well said. I completely agree with that. This is it's on them to make this clear. Like a thing like this should not ever happen. It should not happen. The only way this should happen is if like Blizzard has clearly communicated that you can't do something and people decide to do it anyway. And then, okay, well, we disqualify them. We told you not to do it. It should never be a surprise, which is what happened. Was like you randomly get a message from an administrator of the thing telling you, "Hey, sorry, your runs are disqualified." And like, you watch the stream of Dorky like trying to argue with the guy, and he's just giving like canned answers and not saying anything. It's like, well, can we dispute this at all? And they were basically like, yeah, you can email here, but you're not playing tomorrow. So it just like on every side of this, I feel like they fucked up big time. And it really does damage the integrity of the tournament. Like I've utmost respect for all the people running in this thing and doing this. And it's a bummer for them to feel now like, cause like, I mean, we were kind of making fun of Ducks Can Fly cause they showed up on Sunday and got demolished. They got the goated spot, and goated would have, I think, whether or not they would have beaten the two teams, Mandatory and Perplex, which are very good teams. I mean, we'll never know ultimately, but like, would they have made a race for it? I think they would have. And Ducks Can Fly did not do that. And part of the reason they did not is because under the new ruling system with banning specs and stuff, they fell behind early and they kind of went all in just to survive as much as they could. They did not think they were going to be playing on Sunday. It became very clear very quickly that they were competing for third. And so they went all in on their spec comp to get third and then had to play on Sunday without any of the meta classes that they wanted to play with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess two things. One, I kind of want to explain why you would use a shocking disclosure potion on a demon hunter specifically. And then the second thing I want to do, Scott, is kind of go back to exactly what you were just saying and take a look at what does this mean for people in the MDI or TGP or whatever, and kind of how that bodes for the future. Because one thing you and I have talked about is like Dorky already wasn't playing for a couple of these, and now he came back and he was playing, but he probably takes a loss of money to do that. So that's something that we need to address.
Yeah.
But first off, I want to talk about why you would use this potion on a demon hunter specifically. Aggro is bugged on demon hunters. There are a lot of abilities that don't generate what if you watch Yoda, what he will call real aggro. So to outline it for you, the very few things that do generate actual aggro are the first hit of Immolation Aura, not the ticks afterwards, just the first hit.
Nice.
The first hit of any of your sigils that deal damage. So that's the Sigil of Flame, or I can't think of what they renamed Elysian Decree, but whatever that is now. Sigil of Spite, I think. And then there is a couple of other things like your taunt, any of your direct damage melee abilities, so Soul Cleave or Fracture, and Spirit Bomb. Those are like the only things that generate aggro. Everything else that you do, which believe it or not, right now, Demon Hunter is running Eldrachi, which means Throglaive is very important for them. Throglaive does not generate real aggro. It just tags mobs. So that's a problem. And then the only other way that they can like get mass AoE aggro fast is by using Fell Devastation. And if you blow Fell Dev early, then you're going to die in a later pull in a key like a 21 or something like that, because that's a huge defensive ability for tanks. So these shocking disclosure potions, like Scott was saying, were used for nothing other than fixing the issue that Blizzard has with the fact that half the abilities that Demon Hunters use to get any AoE damage just don't generate actual threat except for the very first hit of the ability. And so when you're having to run a long distance to get a bunch of mobs grouped up, you end up running out of buttons to get actual AoE aggro.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. So they were just trying to fix that in a way.
It is the year of our Lord 2025. Threat should not be an issue ever in this game anymore. This game has been out for 20 years. Threat has not been a core part of the tank's role in this game since Cataclysm. Cataclysm is when they said finally, it's like, okay, you know, tanks have enough going on. We're not going to have the managing threat be the thing. If you're standing in melee with mobs, the mobs will be on you. And that's the way they stated that as a design goal. I remember I was playing then. I was playing a tank and I was like, oh, they've made this clear. Hooray. And then it's never truly, I mean, they've had various moments where they pulled that off and then various moments where they didn't. And like, I know what they're afraid of, right? What they're afraid of is things that have happened in the past where tanks get aggro on things and just kite it forever. And they just hold aggro forever while they're kiting. They don't want that to happen. I get that. There's plenty of ways to solve this problem that aren't the way things are right now. I experienced this as a tank on a bear who didn't have bugged threat, but just has issue gathering, and like we don't like swipe is a really great AoE tool that doesn't have a cooldown, but it's also useless for holding threat. It will not hold threat. It's awful. It's terrible. This just shouldn't be a thing anymore. Like it just should not be a thing. And it happens even now all the time, not just on Demon Hunters. Like, by the way, this is a potion that like people are using in live right now to do this same thing in these high keys because of this problem. Like this isn't a niche problem to tournament realms, to tournament competitions. It's just a fix that people have started doing in the game because they're tired of dealing with this. And it's just silly.
Yeah. So to bring it all home, Scott, we need to talk about what this means for the MDI players in the future of the MDI.
Yeah,
so
don't do it.
Having something like this happen is not only just devastating, but I think a lot of people underestimate the amount of time that goes into the MDI that is not on camera.
Oh yeah.
Like it is an insane amount of time that these teams spend over and over and over and over in these dungeons, perfecting every minute detail and every pull. When you finish a dungeon in 6 pulls, you have to play every pull perfectly. You just have to. And the amount of time it takes to get to a point at which you can repeatedly do those 6 pulls perfectly over the course of 8 dungeons is insane. Like that's so much time. That's so much effort. And so it's pretty demoralizing when it comes to getting a ruling like this after you have already competed. Even more so in the fact that they did this not only once, not twice, but 3 times, and weren't told until after the entire day was over, which is, we're talking like hours probably from their initial key in which they did this, from not being told that, hey, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Which, to be completely fair, if they told them that they couldn't use that potion, it would have thrown off their entire game plan, because they practice for hours while using it. But that doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it the right decision to make.
Yeah. You allow them to come up with a new plan, at least.
Yeah, exactly. But what does this mean for people in the future? It means all of that time for this team was wasted. It means that Dorky, in particular, in that team, who is an extremely successful streamer, who probably has lost thousands of dollars to not streaming their practices and everything like that, because he wants to actually compete and put on a good show for people. Like, is he going to keep doing this? Like, if this is the standard at which we're setting, is he going to keep competing? And if not, I think that's sad.
I don't think he should. And I think he might. Because, like, here's the thing. Like, none of the big name content creators running this tournament are doing it for the prize. Like, yes, it's nice to make money from winning this thing, but like, they are all full-time content creators that make money playing this game. And to your point, like, preparing for this thing requires you to put that aside for weeks, months, possibly. And that costs money. And like, so, I mean, these people compete because they love to compete. They love the game. They love the format. They love the tournament. They think it's fun and they want to do it. And it seems like we're driving those people away from doing it. Like, yeah, I mean, we've talked about how Dorky and some of the other content creators that we've seen have talked about how they call it MDI prison. Every time they do it, they call it MDI prison, because you just live in this jail of doing this stuff over and over and over again for weeks, and yet they keep coming back to it. And it's because they're masochists, but no, it's really because they just love the game. That's it. That's it. They love the game and they want to play the game and they have fun playing the game. And I mean, I just want to, like, it's so funny because I heard someone ask Dorky, will you compete again? And he goes, well, you know, it depends. And I couldn't believe my ears. I was like, because if this happened to me, I would be like, no, absolutely not. I'm done. Never again. But he loves this fucking game so much. And he loves the tournament so much. So yeah, you get people like that who are just like, I'm still probably going to come back for more somehow. But I do think, like, there's a problem. Like, we've talked about the problem with the MDI and this prep and how long the prep takes. And maybe the tournament is better served by just not allowing that kind of preparation. I think one thing I think overall the decision to do like the locked specs thing was a good one. We saw a lot of combinations of groups and classes that we would never have seen in the MDI without this new rule. It does also kind of widen the gap between the teams that have all the time in the world to practice and the teams that don't, because suddenly, like, basically what everyone was doing was they had like an early key comp that was like not the meta comp, but like just under the meta comp. And they would run that until they got to a key high enough to where they could run their meta comp and not ban it. And so the teams that flourished in this were teams that had the bandwidth and time to practice these dungeons over and over and over again with both compositions. And the teams that did not have time to do that, like, if you look at some of the cup scores, you kind of do see that, like, the difference between the top end and the bottom end is the Grand fucking Canyon. It is a massive, massive difference. And I think this is part of it, that, like, we already had, there was a competitive advantage for teams that had the ability and the bandwidth to practice a lot. And now that practice is only going to be rewarded even more now with this new rule that I like, a good rule, but it just creates this issue. And yeah, I still, like we talked about last time, I still don't know what the solution should be. Should you limit amount of practice? Should you limit amount of time? Like, I don't know. Like, part of the fun is seeing things that have never been done before. And if you take away the amount of practice they have, that won't happen. And so you go back and forth and back and forth. And I just don't know the correct call on here, but I do think we're at a crucial breaking point of this. And I think the dorky ruling will long be remembered as the end.
Yeah, I do think that this kind of brings us back to like a more wider thing though. Like, unfortunately, esports is nothing but a giant money sink, right?
Mhm.
Like, unfortunately, it doesn't bring in the sort of revenue that traditional sports do. Because, like, if we were talking about this like it was an actual sport, the reason people like watching sports is they love watching people do something that people are really good at.
Yeah.
Like, that is the whole draw of watching sports. And so, to the same extent, like, it would be the same for an esport. The problem is there's the same revenue income is not the same revenue output that you need for esports as you do traditional sports. Like, traditional sports have been in this area for so long and have garnered such a large following and have establishments already set up and everything like that to be able to continue to run these things. Um, and all of that was happening when losses weren't quite so large. And now
Yeah.
in the world that we live in, like, esports it's fighting an uphill battle trying to establish an esports organization to be able to continue to compete. But I really truly think that if we were in a world in which you could have that ecosystem, then we would be in a better situation when it comes to competitiveness within this tournament,
Yeah.
because then you would get people who were regularly paid to do this stuff, regularly paid to practice, and were able to just hone their skill at the thing at which they are very good at.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, like I said, I think it comes down to the whole ecosystem of esports, which, as much as I like to blame Blizzard for some things, that's not Blizzard's fault at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. I mean, it could have just ultimately be like this thing doesn't work in the way we want it to work. And so this is like the best possible version of this thing that we could ever get in this game, in this year, in this environment. And I guess, ultimately, okay, they're still finding people willing to do it each time. And there's still some amount of enjoyment in watching it. So maybe this is it's not truly broken. So, and it's not worth fixing type thing. But one thing, y'all need to get your rules damn straight, because I looked at the rules and it's like, these are not long enough. Like, these your rules should be way longer.
Yeah. The other thing that I think kind of brings all of this home too is publicize anything that you decide, like any official decision that you feel like needs to be made public.
Yeah.
Make it public.
Yep.
Like, this, anytime you say no, that is probably something that needs to be made public. The circles for these competitive players are so small and so tight that the likelihood that another team isn't doing the same thing that you were just asked is very small. It is very likely there are so many people doing this in your tournament. So anytime you say no, that should be immediately relayed to the entire rest of the people competing.
Yep.
And when you say yes, that's a case by case basis. In the event of like the parasol, which everybody knows about and uses on live, yeah, that should be communicated that you can do that. But if it's something like special tech or a snap or something like that that not everybody knows about, then yeah, sure, keep that one under wraps. But I think the main thing is if you ever say no, it needs to be announced.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. You messed up, Blizzard. You owe
Scott,
that bear an apology.
Player housing. I know, to kind of take us away from this rant that we've had, because we both really like Dorky and wanted his team to succeed, but we got to talk about player housing a little bit. That was the big shebang of this last week. So
yeah, so
I think
what actually happened. So like they were at PAX East, right?
Yes.
And there were a bunch of WoW content creators already at PAX East, and they just invited a bunch of those, especially ones related to housing. Like I was told they didn't just invite WoW content creators, they also invited like content creators in other games, Final Fantasy 14, that also are very familiar with player housing in those games, to basically come sit down and chat and see their current build of what the housing stuff looks like. Right? Did I get that right?
Yeah. Nothing about this was formal. It wasn't a press event. It wasn't anything explicitly formal. If I will say all of this under the caveat, if Preach and the rest of the content creators are to be believed and aren't trying to kind of shove something under the rug that is bigger. But yeah, no, my understanding is this was super informal. It was just a bunch of devs came to these creators and was like, hey, by the way, PAX is wrapping up. I know that, but do you guys want to stick around and maybe look at something for us here, for a day or whatever?
Yeah. And the results from these people have been overwhelmingly positive, right? Like every video that has been made that's talking about this has been like, this is the best player housing we've ever seen. This fixes every problem we've ever had with Final Fantasy system or other systems. This is, I think it was Preach that was like, this is Blizzard doing old school Blizzard things, and that they see something that other people are doing and they iterate on it and Blizzardify it to make it better than those other things, taking all the good ideas from everywhere else and then putting it in a Blizzard stew and making it incredible. I don't actually even know the details of too much of it. We'll get into some of the details that we do know, and they were very sparse on detail, and they really couldn't show us much of anything. And the one thing that I'm most interested in, neighborhoods, they did not really talk about at all. Although apparently they did talk about it. They're just not allowed to talk about that they talked about it. But I mean, like, you like this, whatever. I know this wasn't an official marketing event, but it was damn good marketing, because like every content creator has just been glowing about this thing. And like, you go to the Final Fantasy 14 locations on the internet and you're like, oh, it got their attention too, because there's a lot of people that love that game very much, but everyone basically agrees the housing system in 14 needs work. And like they did when they first announced the housing system in World of Warcraft, they are specifically targeting 14 in how they're talking about this stuff. The inherent limitations of that system are in their crosshairs when they talk about housing. So look, I'm on the record of like, I don't care about this very much. Like, I've never been like a housing person. I've never I played 14 for years and never bought a house in that. I just didn't see the point in doing it. And they've gotten me excited for this thing. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So I think let's start from the beginning, right? And I will say a lot of this, if you've watched Preach's video over this, will be probably paraphrasing a lot of what he said, because
we didn't see anything, right? Yeah. We saw nothing.
Yeah. He put it into the perspective that was very easy for me to digest and give back to you guys. But I have watched a ton of other interviews and a ton of other videos about this as well. So there's a little bit of extra sprinkled in there. So back to the very beginning. How long has this thing been worked on? We don't know. But from my understanding, a very, very long time comparatively to the rest of the expansion that we're going to be getting. Mm-hmm. Like, they have been working on player housing for longer than they have been working on Midnight, is my understanding.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like.
Which is actually mind-boggling. Like, are we talking they were working on this before development of The War Within? Are we talking that they were working on this before development of Dragonflight? Like, it, from my understanding, is there is so much to this system already, and it is in its first iteration, that people are surprised at what they were able to deliver. Mm-hmm. So I think the timeline for this is a lot more skewed than we're giving it credit for. That's the very first thing. The second thing is they said that they have drawn inspiration from a bunch of games. Final Fantasy 14 is the one that everybody's going to draw their first attention to, because that is the like gold standard for player housing at the moment. It's the only current MMO that I feel like people are happy with the way player housing was done. There are other MMOs that have player housing. Elder Scrolls Online has player housing. WildStar had player housing. And then they said that they were even drawing inspiration from games like Valheim, which isn't even an MMO. Like, that's just a survival crafting game. So they're bringing in a bunch of influence and then creating it their own Blizzard way. That's how WoW was created, guys. Like, we didn't get this game without the EverQuests of the world, without Dark Age of Camelot and all the other MMOs that they took, iterated on, and then gave us the Blizzard version of. Mm-hmm. So I'm extremely excited just because of that fact alone. But it really does, like, it paints a wider picture of like how were they able to get a system in which people feel like is so fleshed out, and it's because they've been working on it for a lot longer than they made public. Like
Yeah.
that's the end all be all there.
Yep.
Um
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it's exciting.
yeah, I was gonna ask you a question though. I think that it was, I don't remember if it was Preach or another video, but they were saying that the assets in which every expansion is releasing with now are going to be full-fledged, viewable from all angle assets to be able to be reused in housing, which was not the case all the way up until they decided to implement housing.
Yeah,
So
that is correct. Everything when housing launches going forward is basically every time they work on new art. This is why player housing is such a brilliant piece of content for them, is because they get to double dip constantly, because they have to develop these assets for the game in general anyway. Like every time they do a new raid, every time they do a new zone, they have to build all these assets to populate the zone. And now they get to double dip and say, these are not only assets for the raid, for the dungeon, for the zone, but these are also things you can put in your house.
mhm. The other part of that though is, when did that start? Did that start with the War Within?
I have
Did
no
that
idea.
start with
Yeah.
Dragonfly?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, they said that we're going to be able to use old assets. They're just not going to be. So another thing, because this is going to be another tangent, you're able to dye in color like almost everything that's going to be related to
All the new
housing
stuff.
that
Yeah.
is new. Yeah. So you're going to be able to use all the old assets, but you're not going to have the level of customization that you have with some of the newer stuff. And so, again, we need to ask ourselves, what's considered new? Is it just stuff in Midnight, or is it like, what's new?
Yeah.
So, uh, yeah, I think the timeline is really going to be the determining factor here on like what all customization is allowed,
Yeah.
and kind of what state we get this in. Because as you and I have said on other things in the past, we get things that are their first iteration, and then they iterate on it, it becomes better, and it just grows as time goes on. And this is an evergreen system. It's not going anywhere. It's only going to be growing on.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful that the mechanics of player housing are only going to get better as well. Decorating and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they've got the two different modes, the basic mode and the advanced mode, that allows you kind of complete control. The things that they were told specifically in this one, I'm trying to remember the Preach video, is like the inside of the house has no bearing on the outside of the house, where like, the size inside is indifferent. I think Preach described it like a TARDIS, right? Where like it could be the small little tiny house on the outside, but on the inside it could be this 3-floor massive house where you can build he said you could build a jumping puzzle. And I was like,
yeah,
is that just like a Preach taking things from Final Fantasy thing? Or did they actually say, no, you should be able to actually build something like that in a World of Warcraft house? Because that's a big deal, actually, that like you can kind of see like a third, just for fun. I say another layer or wing to this game, which is just like logging into the game and just exploring other people's fun things that they've created in their houses. That's just for fun, stuff like that I think would be really cool. So like, that's all. You want to know the feature that I think is the best so far? The idea that you can allow people to essentially export designs and share them with people. So like, you build this awesome room. A person who not only does not have the artistic ability, but also does not have the time or want to spend time figuring out the layout of a room in my house, can literally just import your awesome design. And so when I get to walk into my house, I say, oh, this looks cool. That is like, hell yeah. And also, you could basically hire an interior decorator. You can just give someone temporary decorating access to your house to just come in and say, okay, go for it, do your stuff. And they build it and make something for you. Like, that's all, like, for a person that doesn't really want to do the decorating part, but would love to like just have a place that's done and furnished and looks nice. That's very attractive for me. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Scott bought his house with all of the furniture and everything already inside of it. That's what we're learning.
No, I did not do that. But I also have a wife who did that part.
So to talk about furniture and everything, Scott, I think we got to talk about the limit here. So people who play Final Fantasy are going to be very familiar with the fact that there is a limit of items that you can have within your house. They're like servers cannot support you having an infinite number of items on an infinite number of characters. Like
Yes.
that's just not going to be a thing that's ever feasible. WoW's limit, they are stating, is 10,000 items. I don't remember what the current Final Fantasy limit is, but they just increased it, and people were like beaming over the fact that they were going to be able to do so much stuff now in their houses that they couldn't do before.
It's like
Because they
400, I
increased
think.
the
I think it's
yeah.
like something around there.
But the way that this works in Final Fantasy, if you're not familiar, is people who have these like super elaborate, nice looking interiors and have used things in a way in which you wouldn't think to use them, like creating a window out of a bunch of walls and just layering it in a way in which it looks like you're looking out into some thing that is insane. Um, the way that they get away with that is they do what they can with an amount of space, and then when they run out of items, just block off the rest of the house.
Yeah.
So like the rest of like if you could go behind the scenes, like potentially half of their house is just empty space not being used because they've run out of items to be able to decorate it.
Yeah.
It sounds like every single image we have seen of player housing has been of the same house. And the limit for it is 10,000 items. And there isn't currently a definitive number of rooms or anything like that. So I feel like, and again, Preach said they haven't even went over like 2,500 assets
Yeah.
in these houses, like 2,500 items, which is actually insane because from the looks of it, somebody who doesn't know that you're viewing the same house, it all looks like different places. It looks like they set up multiple different houses and everything else. And the fact that it's all one house built by one person and they haven't went over their like item limit is actually pretty impressive and pretty insane, and kind of caters back to the fact that you were saying like people are going to be able to actually probably create like jumping puzzles, or Dratnos has already created a maze, or whatever people want to do. Nightclubs are a big thing in Final Fantasy. I could see those coming to WoW.
So there's going to be some weird shit in these houses, man. There's going to be some weird shit going on.
There is like, this is going to open a floodgate for role players.
Yeah.
And there's already been role playing in WoW. There has been role playing in WoW from the dawn of WoW's existence. But like, this is going to bring so many more people who role play into the game.
Yeah. Can we put the caveat on this? That is the current setting right now is that one item costs one spot out of this 10,000 item limit, and they have said that is not the way it's going to ship. When it ships, items, bigger items, more expensive items will have a more expensive cost to them. So like if a candle, it costs one item, a bed maybe would cost 20 or something like that. So it's not going to quite be what it is right now in the test. I also just, my second point, I just don't think it's going to ship with the limit at 10,000. Like I just don't think it is. I know this is like the big news that we're talking about, and I think they're absolutely fine people reporting on this because I think they're confident that when it ships, it will still be significantly higher than what any other game, including Final Fantasy, is doing. But I just don't see it shipping at 10,000. That seems absurd to me. I'm imagining hundreds of thousands of players and 10,000, like just that's ludicrous. That's just insane.
They need to make sure that their like asset culling is super good too, because like we run through the world and have the ability to view millions of items every time we log into the game.
Sure.
But the reason that that's not a performance issue is because there's asset culling happening most likely. Like things that we can't view aren't actually being rendered and taking up CPU capacity. So, or GPU capacity. So that like performance is one thing that I think a lot of people are going to be very keen to comment on with having such a large plethora of items in your house.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the best way to look at this is, again, you load into the game and are like, if you just stare one direction in Dornegal, you are probably viewing more assets than you will be able to place into your house. And so if you don't have frame rate issues outside of player housing, even a house fully maxed out with items is probably not going to cause you any issues.
Yeah, you're
You
probably
should
right.
be okay.
You're probably right. Yeah. Yeah.
The other main thing about this that I think that we need to make sure to call out is Blizzard is currently not putting any restrictions on the way at which you can design any of these items inside your house. By that, I mean you can scale them as large or as small as you want. You can have them float. You can have them snap to things. You can have them halfway shoved into a wall or another item. They're not putting a restriction on that. And from Final Fantasy, like having things intersect to create something is a normal thing that happens in that game.
Yeah.
But something that they don't do is they don't allow you to free place stuff. So people get creative and they do something called like floating walls, where there's a glitch in the game or a bug in the game at which you can place something and then quickly place something on top of it, and then you put something else under those things and it snaps them up like a centimeter, and you do that hundreds of times to get something to phase through the floor in your basement and into the actual main room of your house to be the right height. And
Yeah.
that's insane. And Blizzard has already said, we're not going to make you do that. If you want something to float, even if it's not supposed to float, sure, have it float. Your place. Who cares?
Yeah.
So I think that is probably the coolest thing that they've announced as far as like the housing decorator is concerned.
Yeah.
I think neighborhoods are probably my top coolest thing that they've announced, though.
Yeah, I think they're holding back on what you can fully do with those very intentionally, because they know it's really cool and exciting, and probably also because they haven't quite figured out how it's all going to work yet. But I mean, like, this is all really cool stuff. It's really exciting. We've been kind of in on this since it was first announced, and I think it does, like, it's just, I am rather cynical about this game at times, and I log into this game and I do the things that get me player power, and I do the things that I think are fun, and I don't want to touch anything else. And the idea of like this being an MMO in the classic sense of MMO is not something I spend a lot of time worrying about. But like, there was a brief moment where I was like, man, can you imagine just like your play session on a Tuesday night is not run a Mythic Plus dungeons, but it's just like, let's go explore this house that someone told me was cool. Like someone told someone who told someone that someone did some really cool jumping puzzle or maze or game or something in this house. And you just spend a couple hours just hopping between houses and looking at things. It's like, yeah, that sounds kind of fun. That sounds like a world, like some sort of massively multiplayer online role-playing game or something.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a concept.
Created with Warcraft even. So
Yeah.
like maybe a world of Warcraft.
So, don't be ridiculous.
So the neighborhoods, though, we do need to talk a little bit about, Scott. It sounds like early rumblings of this are guild neighborhoods are going to be somewhere in the realm of like 50 to 55-ish plots. Which for any reasonable sized guild is probably more than enough plots.
I don't know that many people in real life, let alone in video games.
So hopefully that will be good enough.
Yeah.
And guilds can have multiple plots if they need multiple plots. If you're in one of the, what did Preach call them? A large cesspool guild, then you might have to have more than one plot. But yeah. So that is super cool. I have two major concerns about this system.
Okay.
One, how do you make it ever engaging? Like, how do people always want to come back to this, always want to come to the neighborhood, check things out, make it a lively space for people to want to be, but also not kill the outside world? How do you do that?
Yeah.
And then the second one is, for people who've played Warlords of Draenor, Scott, I know you're not in this group, but like, the sins of the father are very prevalent here, because
Mhm.
if you do give everybody, like if you give people the ability to repair and use the auction house and have all of the vendors that you need for professions and all of this stuff inside your house for convenience, then you completely kill the outside world.
Yeah.
Nobody goes outside their own instance area. Why would they? It doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense to do that. So, um, while I want there to be a reason for you to go back to your house, we're gonna have to strike a balance in where like we still push people to also go out into the actual world and new city that you design.
Yeah. I think they are definitely going to limit the utility available in houses for this exact reason. It seems like that is the way they're going and the way they've been communicating things, that they're not interested in doing the Warlords of Draenor. Your garrison has everything you possibly could need, and you never have to go do anything ever. Um, I do kind of see neighborhoods as a potential way of adding, like the utility is bound to the neighborhood, not the house itself. And so there is this idea that, okay, maybe you're not in the wide world, but you're in your street, your block, your neighborhood. And so you are interacting with people there. I think that's a fair compromise, because like I am very conscious of this idea that World of Warcraft is such a lobby game now, and I don't want to make it any worse, but I also like I don't think adding an auction house to a neighborhood is going to like make the game significantly worse than seeing people but not interacting with anyone in Dornogal. Like everyone just sits in Dornogal, and like we see other people, and occasionally you could be like, oh, cool mount, but like I don't think that feels like a world either. And so like if there's a trade-off of like we just talked about, that this one neighborhood is really cool, and they have really cool houses in it, and like do events, and like let's build a haunted house for Halloween in a house or something like that, and have events like that are player driven. Like, is the trade-off that the main cities look dead? Is that a worthy
Mhm.
trade-off? Maybe it is, right? Maybe it is.
Yeah. The other thing that you just like jogged my thinking on is events that are seasonal and like being able to do decoration parties and stuff like that is even more of a reason that I think they need to have this import export system, because it'll allow you to save what your house was beforehand
Mm-hmm.
and then go back to it.
Yeah, yeah.
And that would be super useful. It would make it so that people aren't scared of experimenting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, you should be able to save that down for sure. Just like
yeah.
your UI.
I also hope they give guilds some tool or something to be able to like set up events. Or maybe there's like an event that you can like, kind of like the map pings are, where you can click on it in the chat and then it pops it up to your map and puts a pin on it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe do that for the calendar. Like
Hmm.
people can be posting in trade chat, advertising, whatever they want to do, and then you can click on it and it puts an event in your calendar. Like, I don't know,
I'm
but I
sorry.
feel like that opens up a ton of avenues for people too.
Unfortunately, trade chat is reserved solely for people talking about Donald Trump, and that's all we're allowed to talk about in trade chat. So you've
Whoa,
already
whoa, whoa,
lost
whoa,
me.
whoa. And getting items crafted.
True.
That is your avenue to get messaged by all the bots so that you can get your items crafted.
Yeah, I mean, literally, trade chat right now is someone asking for an item crafted, and then someone just types Trump, and then, like, just that's it. They just type Trump, and then people argue for 45 minutes. It's great. It's great. What a world.
Yeah. Escaping the real world to go into your video game to not escape the real world at all.
Can you imagine arguing with someone about politics in World of Warcraft trade chat? How fucking pathetic. Like, holy shit.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what viewpoints you have. Doing that in WoW trade chat
It's
is
a bad idea.
psychotic. But I don't really have a ton else on housing that I wanted to cover, Scott.
No.
I mean, again, all of this is word of mouth and from a not actually filmed press event kind of thing. So we're kind of just taking people's word at this point, and very minor interviews that we've been able to see. But it looks good. It looks good. It looks so good.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited for it. We're going to be paying close attention to it as we get closer and closer to midnight, and we'll see what we can do. I'm certainly not going to be designing my house though. I'm be hiring someone to do that.
I'll design your house for you for 1 million gold.
I don't have that. So no.
Well, bear house then.
Yeah, I mean, probably. Put up my Onyxia statue and call it a day.
The last thing that I kind of wanted to touch on, this shouldn't take us too much time, Scott, is now that we have finally gotten 3K, our grandiose goal was to do this. Well, yours was on every healer, and mine was to just have a character to go with you on every healer. But like, what are your plans? What are your plans remaining for season 2?
I mean, I think it largely depends on what kind of happens. So like, I think with my break and just the time I have to commit to the game right now, I don't think we're halfway through the season, maybe a week after halfway through the season now. I don't think in 2.5 months I can get 5 other healers the gear necessary to get 3K. So I'm kind of just tossing that aside. I would like to play other healers though. Like I've been enjoying my druid as well. I would like to get my druid geared and up. He's 660 something, so he's decently geared as of last week. Not as decently geared as of this week, but that's okay. So I'd like to keep playing, and then if there ever like coalesces a group of people to actually push with, I would of course like to do that. Enjoying the season. I'm enjoying, like, you get into the 13s and like I think your brain starts to like switch over to high key pushing mode, which is like for those that have done it, it's a very different way of playing this game. Like, it's just, you just have to be aware of every little thing, constantly thinking. It's exhausting. But it's just a very different vibe, and I like it. And so like I've been, the 13s we did this week, I was like enjoying getting my head around what that feels like again. So I'd like to continue with that. But yeah, I mean, I'm not like, I don't have very specific goals for myself anymore. We did Keystone Legend, hooray! We can cross that one off. But I just want to keep playing the game and enjoying it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think my goals for this season are to actually be able to do keys and not sit in the queue simulator that I've bitched about in the past. So,
dude, the tank issue is real bad right now. Like, real bad.
I'm unfortunately looking back at trying to gear a tank, which I'm hopeful that I will enjoy, but we'll see how long it lives. If not, I've got fallback characters to play. I have my Death Knight, which is at, I think, 28 something now, maybe 29 something. And then I've got a couple of other characters that I want to play as well. My Hunter is still my main though, and still thoroughly enjoy Marksman Hunter right now. Both hero talents are extremely fun to play, and both are pretty viable in Mythic Plus. So
I do think one consequence of the turbo boost thing that we haven't talked about yet is like 4 alts. Like I rolled in, because we were in a group of 5. I rolled into a 10 on my druid at like 640. And I was like, I could probably handle this, and I could. I think with the inflated item level now, trying to pug an alt into like 11s or 12s or 13s necessary to get my 3K at a less than optimal item level is going to be very difficult, because last week my 665 druid was like a little behind the curve on the highest keys people were doing, but not like massively. And now it is massively. So if I fully think this druid can heal a 12. Like, I fully think he can do it. If I try to pug that, am I getting invited into any groups at 665? No, because there's a plethora of 670, mid 670s healers out there. So, I mean, I don't think that necessarily means you shouldn't do something like this in the future, but it does. Alt pugging just got a little more challenging, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I say alt only because it's me. I think the same thing is true for people that this is their first character and they're just behind the curve a little bit.
There is a little bit of a caveat though that is nicer for alts, and that is once you get the 675 average item level achievement, now you only need 10 crests to upgrade any pieces on your alt, which
That's
is
true.
extremely helpful. I mean, that is a massive crest save.
2 upgrades
So
per 12 is just absolutely mental. That's so good.
exactly.
That's so good.
So there, it's a little bit of a give and take. I do think it's a little bit more of a give than a take in this
Mhm.
situation though,
Yeah.
because like, I mean, my alts that I was considering like moderately geared were in the 650s, 655, etc. And now that's like 20 item levels below
Yeah.
what people are looking for. So
Mhm.
we're a little rough. We're a little rough off.
I think the one thing that does not feel good is the crafted item thing.
Yeah.
Crafted items needing 90 crests is something, you know, it felt bad in season 1. They knocked it down. And I know it's like higher item level, so like there's nothing that says you have to craft it at the max level first. You can just do the 60 craft and then recraft when you get 30 more. That's absolutely true. But like I just feel like when you go to do the crafting, you always want to do it at max level anyway, because you can do that right now with the runed crest, right? You can technically craft a lower item level version of it that doesn't require as many crests, but nobody does that. Everyone just grinds until they get the maximum of crests they need and then crafts the highest level possible they can do. So
Yeah.
90 feels like a lot. I realized this because, you know, we filled our vault. I upgraded everything I had upgraded and I had no more crests. And then I was like, okay, maybe I'll switch to my druid. And I was like, no, actually, fuck, I want to save up 90 crests because we're getting a new spark next week and I want to be able to log on and make my spark. Oh, but also I might get a new myth track piece and I'm going to need 60 crests for that. So really I need to save up 150 crests if I want to go into next week and immediately be able to do all my thing. It's just like, fuck. I haven't gotten there, by the way. I'm at 100 right now. So,
Well, there's definitely work to be done. And thankfully, we're going to do more than one key next week. So
yeah.
you'll be
Yeah.
able to get those crests.
Yeah, but I want it
So.
right. I want it right away. I want to log in
are
and
there
bam.
are there any other plans for us for season 2 that I'm not thinking of? I mean, I think you and I are pretty well resigned to just kind of slamming Mythic Plus at this point.
Yeah,
So.
I'm gonna do keys. I mean, I need to run dungeons on some of my alts. As much as I am annoyed about it, like the fact that I can just pop into an LFR and kill lock and stock, and to be able to buy my incredible best in slot trinket for all my healers, it's pretty nice.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, but not Mythic.
but not Mythtrack, of course. No, that'd be unfair. So yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna keep kind of going down my list of healers by priority list of enjoyment and enjoy the rest of the season and see what it has to offer. I mean, I'm looking forward to the horrific visions thing. I think drops starting tomorrow, so probably going to spend some time in there on my monk because there is a small amount of player power attached to that in the helm enchant we get. And then, of course, in 10.1.7, we get our Delve belt, which we will talk more about in the coming weeks as we learn a little bit more about it. But I hope it's more interesting than the Cersei Circlet. I really do.
We'll see. So
I also wish I
let's
hadn't crafted a
good.
belt piece.
Yeah. Yeah. I asked Scott if I should craft a belt or boots earlier this week. And he's like, well, we're getting a belt that's going to be 690 something item
Yeah.
level. And I was like, okay, so boots it is.
Yep. There you go.
For those who are unaware, the horrific visions player power that's getting tied to your character, I think on the upper end, from what I've seen so far, it only looks like a 2% DPS increase
Yeah.
in like AoE. And I think for the most part, echoing void ritual is almost exclusively what like 90% of classes are wanting to run. So
I don't actually
definitely
know
look
which
into
one I
that for your
want.
class.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Has Wowhead updated to say what I want?
We'll find out. I luckily have a good content creator I can watch for Hunter. So
Oh yeah, corruptions. Boom! Look at this.
oh, what you got?
Greater rune of the void ritual.
Yep.
Yeah.
Echoing void ritual. Have fun. It's what everybody wants. So, but I think that's it. I think that's it for today, Scott. We bitched about the MDI quite a bit and
Free dorky.
got to talk a little bit about player housing. So, I titled our script here "Houses for Some and Jail for Dorky." So we'll see if that sticks around for the title of the actual episode or not. But
I mean, in a way, maybe he's finally free.
True.
Because,
he's out of MDI jail or prison.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I want to know, what are your feelings on the player housing news that we've got for this last week? Are you excited? Are you still skeptical? Or are you hearing about it for the first time from us? So, as always, you can contact us over at yellingintothevoidwow@gmail.com. YouTube is at yellingintothevoidwow, and Twitter and Blue Sky are both at intothevoidwow.
And if you are not already subscribed to this podcast, please make sure you do it. Tevin's going to be having a lot of weird, kinky shit happening at his player house, and you don't want to miss any of that. So make sure you subscribe so you get the invite to whatever crazy shit. Oh my God, Goldshire is going to be so tame compared to whatever's going on in that house.
They just need to make Noggin Foggers tradable so that I can just turn everybody into a skeleton too.
But what kind of shit are you into?
Also, guys, please consider liking, subscribing, commenting on the YouTube video. All of these things help us get more exposure, introduce us to new people, and allow us to continue making the content that we make here.
I don't even know if that counts as necrophilia.
Oh, it's just a skeleton. I don't know what's so bad, Scott. They got a good dance. They do the little jump up dance. Come on.
Look, man,
get with the times, Scott. Get with the time.
Whatever floats your boat, as long as you're not murdering people to make the skeletons, it's fine with me.
Just making them drink an unknown liquid.
That's murder.
All right, guys. Until next week, we'll be over here yelling into the void.